We'll call to order. This is the February 26, 2019 regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Waterworks Trustees. I don't know, do we need to say who's here?
I would certainly take roll.
All right, let's take roll then. Sue Hufford here. Dave Carlson.
Here. Andrew Howe. Bolton
Andrew Bolton here. Graham Gillette
is absent.
Okay. Let's see. Before you have the decision agenda, item 1, consent agenda. Do you want to talk to that at all, Bill?
If I may,
Anything?
I would ask your approval for items A, B, C, D, and E as per usual, but I would ask to pull the minutes from the February 5 Customer Relations Committee meeting. I think Mr. Gillette, who's absent today, had concern about some of the language. Michelle is working with him to finalize that, and we'll be back to you at your March meeting asking approval for the amended Customer Relations Committee meeting, but I ask it be pulled and not approved from today's agenda.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda with the exception of the minutes of February 5th, 2019, the Customer Relations Committee meeting, which we'll take up next month. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Let's see here. All right, I don't know how to do this part.
For the public comment, I would suggest we just announce that now is the time and place for public comment on any items before the board or any other business you may have with the board. Anyone from the public have an interest in commenting to the board? Seeing none?
All right, then we'll move on to item 3, action items. A, acceptance of 2018 pre-sedimentation basin number 3 re-chain.
If I may, pretty straightforward item. This is work that's been completed to our satisfaction. The staff recommendation here is to accept the rechaining contract completed by Waldinger Construction. Widener you'll hear later, but Waldinger Corporation in this situation for $88,630. Just to remind the board, this is not the only cost associated with this project. We buy about $150,000 worth of hardware essentially and provide it to Waldinger for this work to be completed. We do that essentially because it's less expensive. It is included in the percentage paid to Waldinger, and they're certainly aware of what we do and why we do it. But we ask that you accept here and take action and pay the $88,630.
Okay, I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 3B, acceptance of nitrate removal facility process residuals pumping station.
I think the board is familiar with the overall project here, and that's to take the regenerated waste from the nitrate removal process here at Fleur Drive through a pump station, pump it in force main to a sanitary sewer connection really up the hill from us, near where the old art store was, if that isn't too much information for you. Two halves here. The half here that we're looking at is for your approval to pay now to Widener, not Waldinger. Widener Construction, $914,213, and to accept the project. Happy to answer any questions you might have on it.
Can I have a motion to accept the,
The pump station, the pump station project.
project completed by Widener in the amount of $914,213.
So moved. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're at 3C.
3C, another item that the board is familiar with, city work on Fleur Drive. That in this case involves relocation of a Des Moines Water Works main. The relocation work is part of the larger city contract that the city lets and accepts. But the portion for the work that we're asking to be done here is $1,320,417. That is higher than our initial estimates, unfortunately, but that money will be taken from the water main replacement budget of $5.3 million. We'd ask you to authorize us to reimburse the city for that work at $1,320,000 and change. Happy to answer any questions.
Do you know how much higher it is?
I think it's 200,000 is my recollection, but Michael, refresh my recollection of what our estimate is versus.
I would hope that would be in here. I think, Bill, I think you're close. I could double check that and get back.
In a situation like this, Andrea, the alternatives for us are not very good.
Sure.
That have to be pulled apart from the city's project, and realistically, that will end up costing us more money than the delta here between what we estimated and the actual bid. But my recollection is it's substantial, $200,000 plus.
And Andrea, it's always difficult when it's part of a larger budget, I have found. Like if you look at the fiscal impact and it talks about the 5.3 million and this is a portion of it. And so sometimes it's confusing how much of this is part of the total and
Sure.
so, but that would be helpful if we had that number as to what was budgeted for this portion under the fiscal impact.
I mean, and
Appreciate it.
200,000 seems substantial, but like you said, in the grand scheme of the numbers we're talking about, it's.
Unfortunately, the alternatives are not pretty,
Yeah.
$200,000 is a big number in your neighborhood and mine and all of ours, I'm confident, but nonetheless, if we were not to be a party to this, try to contract it separately, first, I'm confident we would get in the city's way, and second, it will
Sure.
cost us more than the 1.3 million.
And you know, this last year, the market, I've seen 20% swings where you didn't see it a couple years ago.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
I have some questions on this too, but do you want a motion first?
Yeah, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, so being a resident in that area, what's going to happen to the potholes? Because that's what people are going to ask us. Is this part of the resurfacing that we've been hearing
Yeah,
about?
this will be a major reconstruction of Fleur. And somebody will probably have to refresh my recollection on the dimensions. The southern terminus will be McKinley, as I recall. The northern, Watrous, I'm sorry. The northern terminus, I thought was Flight Parkway, but
Ted, are you just speaking of the water main work, or are you talking about?
no, we're talking about the city project.
Okay. road work is broader than our water work, correct?
Yes.
Right.
No question
It's
about
gonna
it.
be a complete resurfacing.
Yeah,
It's not
it'll be,
patched.
it's actually beyond resurfacing, David. This is one where they actually take up the entire roadway. It'll be a reconstruction.
Hmm.
So it'll deal with potholes in the area within the meets
From
and bounds
Watrous to-
of the project only. So the potholes you're seeing on Park Avenue or on Flag Parkway itself, as an example, will not be dealt with.
And then what about the sidewalk project? Is that further down the road? Because I see on the map, you're showing the Wakanda area, and I know there's discussion right now about sidewalks coming down Fluor on both sides.
My understanding, and again, not a detail that we would normally be involved in because that's within the scope of the city's large project. My understanding is the Wakanda piece is not on the table in this project, Sue.
Okay.
I think there is a portion in front of the park itself that is on the east side of Fluor Drive and in front of Grace Lake Park that will be put in sidewalk. Public land, not the issues with neighbors and maintenance that we have or the city has as it moves further away from the park into the commercial and residential property areas. So as far as I know, Wakanda know, the area closest to us here, the other side, the east side of Fluor Drive will be sidewalked. Michael, or you have a better read on that? Or more?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. I'm pretty confident that's where they are, Sue.
And then just one other question, I'm sorry, but it talks about project beginning spring of 2019
Yes.
and being completed in the 2020 construction
Construction
I
season.
season.
believe that's a reference to the city's 2020 construction season. I think this work will begin this spring and is the city's fiscal year
July
July.
1.
So,
And then we start into their 2020 season.
yes. So I think our work will be done in this calendar year, but.
She's asking about the larger issue. It'll be 2 years, Sue, and it'll be a
That
mess.
Fluor is gonna be torn up.
And it'll be a mess, yeah. There'll be head-to-head traffic this is the northbound lanes first. So the southbound lanes will be head-to-head,
Okay.
So
2
when
lanes.
for the Ruan connector, when floor is all torn up, this piece will also be all torn up?
There's coordination between the projects to try to minimize the disruption as much as possible, Andrea.
There'll be just one lane through, right?
Well, there'll be 1 lane each direction
Right.
through, correct. That's my understanding. Any different view, Ted?
Now they go head to head.
Yeah, head-to-head southbound, I'm sorry, in the westernmost lanes that are now southbound first, and then next year switch to the other side. But the work will be done coordinating with the connector to try and minimize rework and expense associated with both projects.
Now, if anybody can tell us when the spring of 2019 will be. So we have a motion to authorize staff to reimburse the city of Des Moines for water main relocations for Fluor Drive reconstruction. And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
3D, if I may, jump in. This is authorizing Diane to sign on your behalf as a 28E. This is a 28E that essentially has been negotiated by us with Xenia and with the city of Waukee. We become kind of the intermediary in some complex discussions about transferring capacity essentially from Xenia to Waukee and existing lines. There'll be new control valves, new chemical feed facility, and new booster station also in this process. Ultimately, again, we're kind of the pass-through and the intermediary. There will be expanded operation and maintenance responsibilities that will fall to us, but Waukee and Xenia will reimburse us fully for that as we move forward in the process. But this is a great example of what regional facilitation is all about. Obviously, this is nowhere near the city of Des Moines. And frankly, these are the kinds of deals that need somebody in between to be able to help them with technical data, that is Xenia and Waukee, as well as some objectivity into how to handle it and how to exchange money for capacity. And we've completed that process. It's authorizing Diane to sign on your behalf to move this process forward.
I'll take a motion, then I have some questions.
Sure.
So moved.
Second?
My question goes to, I know we have this one and probably another one. Is it, the reason for our involvement, is it historical? Does it spring from somewhere? What is it, why is it that we're in the middle?
Well, as an example, a lot of
Yes.
this hinges on the Louise P. Moon facility, which is owned by us, but largely managed for the benefit of our western suburbs. So we are naturally the right person to be involved in
Okay.
discussions about capacity and use and future projections of need. And we're also probably the easiest party to act as a go-between among suburban parties in facilitating the best overall outcome and providing some fairness and valuation and some expertise in engineering, frankly, that the other communities may not have. Mike, you want to take a swing at it differently?
The only comment I would add parallels your first comment of there's numerous facilities out there for the benefit of those communities that are already operated and maintained by us, and so there's kind of a deep integration of controls and radio signals already out there to kind of make this whole thing work, so this was just kind of a natural extension of that.
Could
And
I
some-
add
I'm
sort
sorry.
of an extension of a customer service model to the wholesale customers also?
Okay.
There are a number of new facilities, chemical feed, control valves. Frankly, those are the kinds of things that fit more easily in our business model of operation and maintenance than they would in the other communities.
So did they reach out to us, or did we help initiate?
You know, it's a chicken and egg, Andrea. I'm not sure that I can answer that one with any great accuracy. We certainly have been concerned about the amount of water available to the city of Waukee and have facilitated a number of different conversations aimed at trying to help them to address that. But are we the chicken or the egg, Mike?
It's a dead heat. Our expressions to them about some peak hour concerns in Waukee helped plant a seed for them that they needed a little more capacity or more than little. And creativity sprung from that, and in the end, they ended up calling us back to see if there was a way to coordinate and collaborate a little bit.
Just to your point, or someone's point, it's just a good example to point to as we are having these regional conversations, that this is an example of where it worked.
We provide value.
It's-
Great
yeah.
point.
And without pointing to Xenia and Waukee necessarily as fitting into this category, sometimes we're in a better position to facilitate the discussion. There are sometimes tensions between neighboring suburbs about how matters like this can be resolved. We had some objectivity and some historic importance to that discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize the chairperson to execute the 2080 agreement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
If I may, I'll jump right into item E, which is requesting setting a date for a public hearing with public hearing next month. This is very much Ruan Connector related, Andrea, to a subject you raised earlier. That project will require a relocation by Mid-America of some utility service they have in the right-of-way, and this is granting an easement on our land, actually, to provide them that easement. So if you'll just approve, we'll go through the public notice process for a public hearing on this next month.
Okay, I'll take a motion to establish the date of the March 2019 board meeting as the date of the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
Are there any questions, any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Item 3F, actually not particularly well captioned at the top. I apologize for that. We're asking for a public hearing that has been duly published to grant an easement on property that we own, that is Des Moines Waterworks owns in the Maffitt treatment area, Maffitt Reservoir area, to the city, to West Des Moines Waterworks for a new booster station and a water main leaving that booster station that will need to cross a portion of our property. So I would suggest just following a regular public hearing process here, opening it for comment.
All right, I will open for public hearing for comments from the public regarding the granting of an easement to the city of West Des Moines across Waterworks Real Estate. Anyone here who'd like to speak to that? Seeing no one, we'll close the hearing and take a motion to authorize the chairperson and the CEO and general manager to execute the document that grants an easement for the water main.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
If I may, we'll jump into item 3G, which is to hold a public hearing on a well rehab of the Maffitt Reservoir. You will recall our process of drilling wells into the alluvial aquifer ultimately requires us to maintain the wells through a cleaning process. We have gone out to public bid with your approval on the well rehab process at Maffitt. We have bid this both as a base bid and an ad alternate. The ad alternate essentially is to look at pricing and see if we believe it's in our best interest, instead of doing one well, to do two. Often in situations like this, you save mobilization costs and some other costs by doing two as opposed to one, when the contractor's there shifting to the next well rehab. The economics here were not as enticing, so what we are asking here is for your approval for the total base bid payment to Lane Christensen of some $224,000. But I think you'll want to open the public hearing and ask for comments.
I will open the public hearing for comments regarding the form of contract plans and specifications and estimated cost.
We've received no comment from the public concerning the bid letting.
And I see, we'll close the public hearing.
Got it. And to note that we have determined that there is no coordination of existing infrastructure regionally that would prevent us from leveraging this process forward. There's that finding in your materials.
And I,
Bill, on this particular project, we wouldn't customarily make the finding because it's not new infrastructure.
Got it, thank you, Rick.
and I'd like a motion to approve the project's form of contract plans and specifications and estimated cost.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can I
Bill,
ask
does
you a
the,
question? It says here that you will provide analysis.
Now,
Why is that number 7?
Why is it that far down? Is that what you're saying? I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'll ask you about this piece of paper.
Yeah, because actually, we'll be happy to give you the piece of paper. Yeah, actually, that's before the motion to approve. So that's the idea.
Number
It's
7
it's
and
in
8.
the, it's in the right sequence, I think.
All right. Anything else on
No.
Bill, does the bacteria feed on the iron, or it just lives in?
Yeah,
the
Kyle, do you
environment?
want to talk a little bit about well rehab and our experience, what's going on here?
The wells out there have not been rehabbed since they were first installed on this one. We do see some buildup of, not as much iron, but other sediment that's on in there, and the aquifer stuff can get, what's the word I'm looking for here? Condensed And so they're jetting that out, and I don't know if they did a presentation, on that.
Vern did show,
Video
for us
that
and
shows
showed
how
a video of
the
that.
stainless
But-
steel screen gets plugged, and then.
Comment a little bit on the bacterial incrustations here and what goes on as part of the
Does
cooling
it feed
process.
on the iron or the other things?
You can help Mike on that, on the chemistry of.
My batting average is not gonna be great.
It's winter, you're not playing baseball,
Well,
you're just practicing now, Michael.
I can't think that it feeds on the, if it's gonna feed on the iron, it's gonna be the iron that's in the water, not the apparatus.
That's what I was wondering.
Right.
So it's, think of it more as these dissolved minerals are precipitating and they're blocking the well stream. So we need to go in there with some level of physical force or chemical force and either physically remove these incrustations or use chemicals to dissolve them back into solution. So I think the method has worked best for us, does not involve the chemical cleaning, it's a more physical removal with high pressure
Jetting.
jetting.
So is there another well rehabilitation project for Moffett Reservoir area?
Realistically, as part of our budget process, you will probably see annually a well rehab project each year.
Okay.
For both Moffett, not so much for Saylorville, but nonetheless, there'll be a rotation there also.
I'm just looking at that $400,000
Yes.
budget, so we'll have leftover on that.
We will, but we're about ready to tell you where part of that leftover is gonna go.
Okay.
A significant portion of that leftover, unfortunately. So, yeah, there's this constant balancing, Andrea, on, you see it in the water main replacement process where we had $5.4 million, $5.3 million. Essentially, we assumed that we'd spend probably $1.1 million on the city relocation process. It comes up $1.3 million, so we draw more of that than we'd like. You'll see here in just a second that that's also the case
Okay.
for the well rehab project. We found something else actually at a different location that'll be helpful to us in moving our mission forward.
Great.
All right, so I think we are to number 4, information items. Board-
Actually,
And yeah, if you
we
could-
need to have analysis of bids received and contract award.
That's,
And that's, again, we received 2 respondents here. It's in the yellow materials that you have or the yellow sheet that you have. 2 different bids. This is certainly the low putative among the 2 respondents. The staff recommends Lane Christensen.
right, so I assume now I need another motion to award
Yes, please.
the 2019 well rehabilitation contract to Lane Christensen Company for the base bid of $224,236 and authorize the chairperson and CEO to execute the contract.
So moved.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're finished.
In terms of action items, now it's talking about committee reports.
Right.
Madam Chair.
So board committee reports, planning committee?
I think we talked about some replacement, wasn't it, Bill?
You had a presentation from Carla Schumacher at the planning committee level, talking about water main replacement. That's right, David, but no action taken. The primary purpose was to remind you of our process of assessing where we spend, in this case, $5.3 million in the water main replacement program. Some of it goes to main relocation work, like happens out here at Fluor. Some of it follows our experience about where particular failures are, and we're trying to avoid those failures by replacement. And some of it also is consistent with the modeling and greater plan that we have for long-term improvement from our study with HDR. You'll recall that we have a long-term plan for replacement that tries to move us up the curve of greater asset management in prolonging the life of existing facilities.
Any questions for Dave? Sue, customer relations?
We had a customer relations meeting early in February, and all of our board members were there. And I think there was a charge really given for us to work closer with our staff, in determining what our next steps might be, and the possible engagement of a consultant. Beyond that, I know that Graham had some questions on the notes that were in the minutes, so I did provide at least what I thought happened to Michelle, but it was very late in her getting it, so there may be some just translation between what I thought I heard and what you thought, but we'll look forward to that. I would like to update, if I could, on a meeting that we just had today in Ankeny. And this was with Mayor Lorenz and with David Jones. And I think we all know that Ankeny has been one of our strongest customers, largest users, as has, Urbandale and Johnston and West Des Moines as well. But Ankeny has really pushed for the idea of regionalization. Gary Lorenz started with wanting a seat at the table, and I think as ideas have evolved, he has continued to be there to say, let's keep pushing this, let's find out a way. So I thought I would share some of the information from the meeting. I know Ted was there, Bill was there, and so I would encourage you, if I'm missing anything, please feel free to jump in. But what I heard from Mayor Lorenz is that they are ready for a proposal to come forward from Des Moines Waterworks. They would very much like to see what it is we would like to have and to make the opening offer. The two big hangups, as they identified, and areas that we need to clarify in this proposal would be 1, asset transfer, and number 2, rate setting. And so I think we have had some expertise when it comes to rate setting with Raptellus, and I think the asset transfer concept we thoroughly went into detail with Jason Mumm from FCS. Des Moines Waterworks, in Ankeny's opinion, we need to make the first outreach to them and give them an idea of what it is we are wanting on the regionalization piece. I think the financial information that was laid out by FCS was all good. It gave us, I'm gonna say, a range, if you will, of what Des Moines Waterworks could negotiate with. And so I think the timing could be very good to do exactly this. Now, in the meantime, Diane and I have been having ongoing conversations with John from Urbandale and Jody from West Des Moines. And at this point, I think it's fair to say that they are not interested in continuing a consulting relationship. And yet, I believe Diane and I would say, and I think Bill and Ted would agree, we need some additional outside help as a utility to determine, to take all the data, the information that we currently have, and help determine what that proposal exactly would be. So I would hope that by the time we meet next month, and probably as we would flush this information out in our customer relations meeting, et cetera, that we should be able to let this board determine what it is exactly that we would expect and want in an initial proposal on regionalization. So I thought it was a very good meeting. As always, Ankeny just lays it on the table. They are very supportive of the relationship with Des Moines Waterworks. And from this meeting, I know that Bill presented a couple of ideas there that seemed to resonate very well with their staff and that they would support. So Bill, do you want to build on?
That'd be very succinct. What staff intends to do to bring to your March meeting for approval, but bring to the community relations subcommittee for discussion. And we need to talk about date for that in a moment. But the particular recommendation from staff is that we engage in an agreement, joint agreement, or separate agreements, I'm not sure yet which, with both Raptellus and Financial Management Services, FCS, Jason's group, to complete a look at asset transfer and options under asset transfer, to look at rate review process. And I would also throw a third emphasis in there on a process that will also look at governance moving forward, involving the participating communities in the regional production utility. So that's what you're going to hear about certainly at the end of March with your direction, but certainly I think more specifically during your Customer Relations Committee. And what I would suggest is moving that from the 5th to the 12th. I think Sue is unavailable on the 5th. The 12th is a day where you already have a Finance and Audit Committee discussion. That's going to be a pretty important one about our view of a 5-year CIP moving forward that really ties into any regional consideration. So what I would suggest is we change the date of the Customer Relations Committee to immediately following the Finance and Audit meeting on the 12th. But essentially the staff recommendation will be for this board and this board only to engage FCS and Raftellus in a process to move us forward, looking at asset transfer, looking at rate setting, and looking at governance, also attentive to the idea that this board, that is the Des Moines Waterworks Board, would continue to have sole responsibilities for the Des Moines distribution system. The Des Moines distribution system may have outgrowths beyond Des Moines involving, as an example, Pleasant Hill and Windsor Heights in total service areas, but that's a detail that we can sure talk about, and we'll want our consultants to refine for a discussion later on. But happy to answer any questions you might have along those lines, but I think it was also a very good discussion. Ted, are you really?
The one thing I would add is I thought the mayor and the city manager did a nice job of helping me understand their vision of, FCS did a great job. They presented a lot of options, but they didn't really present what's going to happen. And given all these divergent views that have come out of that, they feel it's time for us just to say, here's what we propose will happen or should happen. Bring this to a direction that everyone can either coalesce around or walk away from, and that was very clarifying for me.
So you suggested that this board, because West Des Moines and Urbandale aren't interested in working with consultants anymore, so this board would work with the consultants to put together a proposal that then could be shared with Ankeny and hopefully others.
Correct.
And I want to be careful though, it's not that they're not interested in engaging in consultants. We took the idea forward that came from the customer relations meeting, and they were not interested in expanding
SCS.
that scope,
Oh,
to
just
what we
that
discussed, correct.
Particular one, okay.
But after hearing what the mayor and the city manager in Ankeny said, it was really put on us. It's time for us to determine as a board what exactly is our offer, what exactly would we need in order to move ahead on regionalization. They came back on a couple of previous presentations that had been presented and said, we're not interested in this, we're not interested in that. The direction that Jason was going with asset transfer is what we're interested in. So I think we need some help as a board, as a staff, I would think, in determining what that range is. And then we're gonna have to spend some time, and I'd look to you, Counselor, to say, not in a public meeting, to determine what that offer is.
To put it differently, can I, Rick, just to refine, because I'm sure we'll want to hear your view of how we can protect customer issues as well as proprietary issues. But when we talk about a proposal, what, in my view, the ultimate issue is how you value assets, how you value the brick and mortar, and how you monetize the purchase capacity agreements. And I think Jason has been straightforward from the beginning that there's a range of values, and ultimately what you decide is a fair price is a negotiated fair price. But a discussion about that range and getting perhaps a preliminary report report from the consultants on how that process can move forward and what the kind of range that we're talking about. It would certainly, I think, be in our best interest to consider customer relations issues and proprietary issues to try and deal with that in closed session before there's a final report.
What I was gonna say is there is a provision in our governing chapter 388 that allows non-public discussion of proprietary and confidential competitive information. And I would judge this to be an example of that kind of thing. It also protects the records from not being public records. It is a limited time and duration exemption, but I think it's feasible to think about a private deliberation about negotiating positions in the environment we find ourselves in, which is one of competition to a certain extent with some of the other political subdivisions and municipal utilities in the region. And that's section 388.9 of the Iowa Code.
Great. So as we look ahead, I thought there was great clarity today by talking to Ankeny, a suburban customer that really is key to this whole regionalization piece of the pie. And much like our discussion from the customer relations meeting, I think we put our offer out there, our proposal out there. Hopefully an Ankeny and Urbandale would be interested in doing that. I think there is still an interest from West Des Moines in being part of a regional entity. I do know that some of the numbers from the FCS study turned off some of our suburban customers because they felt they were so advantageous to Des Moines. So that's where I think we have maybe a little more wiggle room to deal with, if you will, in the negotiation. And so we need to have a real strong board consensus around this. I will say that there was a lot of discussion about where is the rest of your board on this. Because as Diane and I are making these meetings on regionalization, I want to thank her not only as being chair, but being at all of these meetings that we have had with John and Jody and carving out the time. This is the direction on asset transfer that the suburban customers want to go. So if we don't have an appetite for that, we need to just say no. And because that is definitely where they want to go. They don't want a seat at the table, but without any say, without skin in the game. So they're ready to come to the table and to be really part of the overall process. But they've made it clear asset transfer needs to be on the table. Would you agree, Bill?
I would. And again, we've been kind of down a winding road relative to asset transfer. Initially, you remember, it was one of the governing principles that there would be no asset transfer. Then the mayor of West Des Moines really insisted that we look and integrate asset transfer as an option. And now West Des Moines is saying, well, the asset transfer 25 years from now. So a very meandering road that we've gone through relative to asset transfer. But ultimately, when it comes to how in the future we'll have to bond for capital improvements, suburban interest in making sure that investment they make, they have governance responsibility for, and they have ownership interest in, really, in my view, necessarily takes us down a road of asset transfer. But the devil is always in the details. What the sale price is, if you will, and what kind of credit is out there from some suburban customers is going to be really a policy matter for you all to decide on ultimately. But we need a lot more detail and range of valuations and options on the table relative to asset transfer than we have now.
So just to be clear, I think the direction that we are moving would be this board would stay intact for all of the distribution for the Des Moines customers, for all of the issues for Des Moines customers, ongoing maintenance, construction, etc. the asset of the production facility would become part of this regional entity at some described time in the future or with negotiation with the suburban customers. But the West Des Moines Board of Trustees, unless they would take other action, the Urbandale Water Board of Trustees and Des Moines Water Board of Trustees would remain intact for their own customers and providing that distribution. So I just want to make sure you know that that's the kind of a summary of the overall model that everyone has talked about. But it's the production facilities, being able to look out as our, diagram talks about what it is we're going to have for needs 10 years down the road, 20 years. So the planning for that, determining where the additional plants go or enhancements to the existing plants would all be governed by this new regional entity that would plan for the future for our Central Iowa region.
And if I may, again, I'd suggest, and hopefully all 5 of you, including Mr. Gillette, will be able to attend on the 12th Finance and Audit discussion, which will be very revealing to you about what we're seeing as the need for capital improvements moving forward, directly tied to a discussion on customer relations, which I would suggest immediately following it on the 12th. So if you allow that change, we'll move forward with that, Ms. Michelle. That is dropping the customer relations meeting on the 5th, moving it to the 12th. David, I think we'll still, and Andrea, I think we'll still have the planning committee on the 5th. Amy has some interesting information on our history of billing services for the city and also our service territory and our category of customers. Is that fair, Amy?
Very fair. On the 5th.
Yes, correct, for the regularly scheduled planning meeting.
Any other questions about?
I was just, I know that we're looking at kind of starting over with the help of this outside consultant, but that original 2080 agreement that West Des Moines kind of put together for comments, that didn't get into very much detail of the governance side of it, did it?
A couple things from my vantage, and please, board correct me. The 2080 actually we put together kind of collectively. Our legal counsel, that is legal counsel for the 3 boards, and a special project, put it together. The failure of that really probably had to move forward any further had more to do with just staying away from asset transfer as an issue within the 2080 than anything else. And second, in this situation, we are not starting all over again. FCS is the consultant that has done the work. And one of the frustrations I think that all of us have is that about 4 years ago, there was a selection process that took us to using Black and Veatch as a consultant that provided specific recommendations on how to move forward with valuing assets and valuing purchase capacity. That particular recommendation was largely rejected, and so we started all over again with FCS. The consultant that the staff recommendation will be to move forward on spent about 2 years on it. There's certainly a number of people that now want to abandon FCS. It looks increasingly like you as a board, to me, have taken a great leap of faith with monetizing purchase capacity. You've decided to provide some value, although the instrument itself certainly does not require you to do so, to give suburban credit and money that's been paid in ownership in the future. But we've had 2 opportunities for the suburbs to jump at a way that would monetize that and provide them a path forward. They rejected it each time, so now is the time, I think, for Des Moines Waterworks to take the lead, work with one of the consultants who we've worked with before, FCS. Raftellus, we've also worked on the rate side before, and provide a specific range of options that then would be part of a larger, now I think we can say, without much debate, negotiations between those who really want to play and those who do not. And there will be, my clear message, I think Ted articulated this also, as well as Sue, there will be parties that will not want to move forward with this approach. West Des Moines and Waukee certainly could be 2 of them. But I think it's incumbent on us, for a number of reasons, to take the lead, move forward, and see where it takes us in negotiations.
And I'm holding out hope that everyone would want to be part of the region. I think, it's been a frustrating process. Originally, when we first started talking about it 2 years ago, we were looking at the DART model. Well, they worked out what they were going to do with DART in, I think, 7 meetings. But it's a totally different thing when you're not talking about transferring a bus. You're talking about routes and payment from different suburban customers and that kind of thing. So if we are able to solve this, and I really think we can, I felt better today than I have in the last 2 months. I will say that there's still great interest for us to see what we can do on this. So if we are able to do this, I think it'll be a great model, and I do believe that Jason Mumm from FCS, after completing the work that he has done, and this is in the area that he works all the time, he has some great ideas that he has shared with, well, he hasn't shared all the ideas with Ted, but he has said, I have some ideas on what we can do to make this happen. So, he's looking at national benchmarks and other organizations, so I think this board could make this happen. And I think there could be some very innovative things too, Dave, that we've talked about.
Any other questions? Sue, would you also, as part of the Customer Relations Committee, give a report on where we are with the zoo?
Sure. We're still waiting for the proposal from the city of Des Moines. I think the last time we met, we told you that we were supposed to have a proposal. We had asked for a couple pieces of property, primarily for us to store equipment, because we're going to be taking down the barn, so we'd like to have some land. Diane and I also, since that time, have met with their new incoming chair, Peg Armstrong Gustafson. I thought we had a wonderful meeting with her. She seems very approachable and interested in doing what's right for the zoo, looking at conservation methods, and realizing that, we both slipped a little bit in that we didn't identify them day one. They thought they had a misunderstanding that the city of Des Moines had told them they wouldn't have to ever pay for water. So I think we have the right people at the table with a few modifications, and so we have a meeting on the 12th is that the right day? With the city of Des Moines to find out what their proposal is. I would hope we'd see that ahead of time. Bill, that would be one thing I would ask of you. If you wouldn't mind reaching out to them and saying, meeting scheduled the 12th, we'd like something to review in advance so that we're not
Happy
having.
to do that. I'll reach out to the city manager and ask for that. I think the city manager will tell us that this is a political issue and they don't have a particular proposal, but I'm happy to remind them that they committed to providing one, and we'll go from there.
Right, it
I
just
didn't
means
see anything except a meeting schedule, no
It's kind of-
agenda or.
to react when you're just, you walk into a meeting and you don't know, like, okay, so Bill, does that give you the amount of space you need? How far is it from it'd be nice if we could have addresses of the property, because I think we were pretty clear that there has to be.
We're down to a
property.
single property, and it's the one right over here by the body shop, for those of you who may know that area. We were able to look at our needs. Ted's had a number of discussions with the city, and our interest, I think, can be confined to a single piece of property, but I think the larger issue, this city will want to know what credit that they are given for that and where that takes us on arrearages that are there from our vantage, how we're going to handle the building in the future. But I certainly didn't mean to be objecting, Sue, to asking for the very basic courtesy of if there is a proposal, telling us what it is before we get in there, and asking for an agenda. But I'm afraid it's likely to be the round robin discussion that we have seen time and time again.
I would be surprised with leadership of PEG if that would be allowed, coming from the zoo standpoint.
Good.
I think, at least in the meeting that Diane and I had one follow-up phone call with her, I think she is very interested in threading this needle so that it's agreeable to everyone.
Terrific.
Thank you. Graham isn't here, but do we have another report from the Botanical
Do not.
Center? Okay. The foundation board.
Well, I guess 3 of the board members that are here were at the meeting, and it was really a good meeting. It covered about everything, and I don't know if anybody'd like to comment on it, but we kind of got to see each other and hear what people thought, and it was just really good to have the board there. And I think if you guys didn't know everybody, just the people you saw, it's really a good, constructive, and you kind of got a feel for how they're looking at everything. They're not just doing things.
It was impressive to hear how well they're doing with their fundraising and their asks and they're just lining up of all of the boxes that need to be checked to move the project forward, so.
They're organized and they're doing it properly. They're really, it's a deep thought. It's not just some people going in there and flinging stuff. And I don't know, I think it's gonna be a real productive year, and we're really lucky to have these people.
I
You-
think it's
you had
really
questions,
exciting. I
Eva.
think that you're seeing the next generation of Des Moines leadership in that group.
And we-
It's really good to see.
And we've had I think 5 presidents, and all of them still come, I think. Which is amazing. And they're still fired up.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything that is immediately relevant to share with this board beyond that.
Laura, government outreach update, and I want to thank you for all of the updates that you do weekly. to
Yeah.
let us know.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We have a great resource with our consultants, advocacy strategies that are up there day in and day out. Luckily that I don't have to do that. So they're up there following, tracking, send me things that are pertinent, and then we react to them almost daily. And then those reports are weekly that they provide us to you and the senior staff as well. I just wanted to do one final reminder that we have a legislative breakfast this Thursday morning, Thursday, February 28th at 7 a.m., very bright and early, room 116 at the Capitol. So staff, board members are invited. There is no formal presentation. It's kind of just a open house style social breakfast. Really, we are going to be capturing what we just discussed during the customer relations update. We have been doing great work for 100 years, but now we're working collaboratively with our communities to make sure we can still provide the great service for our region for the next 100 years. So just recapturing what was discussed already here. This is the handout that's going to be provided to the legislators, so take that home. If you'd like to memorize some facts and figures, so you have it on the tip of your tongue while you're discussing over breakfast and coffee and eggs. Other than that, we just continue to monitor and react to the proposed legislation that's coming out of the legislature. I'll bring things to your attention that are that need immediate reaction that we're tracking.
This is really nice.
Yeah, thanks.
Very
Thanks,
well
Craig.
done.
Thank you.
Any questions for Laura? Anything? Who plans to be there on Thursday?
Plan to stop by.
Who plan to be there? Maybe
But you do get a good parking space when you're there, so.
there it is. All right, Bill, are you ready to talk about the emergency brine tank
I am.
repairs?
And the materials have been provided to the board. This is one where it's probably not a public improvement, and this maybe fall into the category of over communication to the board. But that notwithstanding, let me step back for a minute. We talked earlier about the nitrate regeneration pump station and force main. When we denitrify at Fluor Drive, one of the processes we can use is to denitrify through an ionization process. It relies on salt. And it's salt in suspended water. It's in brine form. We have a storage tank underground here at the Fluor facility that has been in operation for now 25 plus years, as long as the denitrification process has been in place. We had an opportunity earlier this year in the off season to pump down that brine tank, dispose of its contents, which is not an easy process. It's an expensive process, both to pump down and to then dispose of the brine. But in that process, we found a number of deteriorations in the walls and lining of the brine tank. What I have certified after certification by Mike McKernan as our engineer is the need to move forward with specific repairs to that that are not part of the normal process of bid letting. That is that rather than allow the brine tank to be filled up again as we get closer to a denitrification need, as we get into the spring months. Once we pumped it down, removed and eliminated the materials or disposed of the materials that's in it to take action. And the action that I have taken and is here for your knowledge is to move forward with the repairs on that chamber once it was in fact taken down. And this is once it was decanted, if you will, once the materials were, the brine was removed and disposed of. This is a fairly expensive process, and you asked earlier about, as an example, what happens to money that is in excess when we go with one rehab project as opposed to two at the Maffett Reservoir. All this is money from Kyle's budget and water production that essentially now then is shifted from looking at a second well there in the foreseeable future for well rehab to funding this and some other needs that we will have in the operating world. But I wanted you to be aware of this project. Again, Rick, you're certainly welcome to weigh in on whether 384.103 finding is really necessary in this circumstance. I think transparency and a better understanding from you of some of the operating issues we run into pretty important, but this is not one that I viewed as ripe for delay and allowing to be in a circumstance where we're using the brine tank again, have to pump it down and then go through a bidding process to make the repairs at the end of the season. I viewed it appropriate and in the best interest of the utility to take that action now. But Rick, you want to talk about public improvement and whether this is an appropriate emergency finding?
Well, I think it's fully appropriate emergency finding. It comes within the spirit and letter of section 384. I don't remember the subsection.
103, I think.
103. So I have no legal issue with proceeding as you did.
Well, I have a question. So who's gonna do the work? Who does the
Western Waterproofing, or I think they've changed their title now.
Specialty.
Western
Contractor.
Specialty now, yeah. They're gonna do the work for us. They have, these, just entry into a chamber like this is a permit required confined space, a lot of hazards associated with something like this. So finding the right people to do it is a bit of a challenge. They were part of our inspection process, and we viewed them as the most appropriate people to turn to right away to make repairs. Kyle, anything you want to add to that?
Certainly, we've been watching nitrate levels. They are fluctuating. When we were draining the tank, it was up as near as 8.5, 10 being the drinking water standard. They're fluctuating based on the melting and the river stages that we're seeing. But the sooner we get this on, the better myself and the operators feel of having that facility. We will have to get salt delivered here, which will take a few days too. And so every day that system is out is a liability for us.
But realistically, from an operating standpoint, you're at a point where we would be filling the tank again here pretty shortly, just to ease
Absolutely.
the uncertainty here, and that, again, kind of restarts us in essentially losing the savings that are there from decanting it and disposing of the brine. I felt we needed to act on this at the time without coming back to you for approval or going through a normal process, and made that judgment, but want you to be aware of it.
This is a long answer. I can ask it another time because it's not
Sure.
relevant to the discussion, but how do you dispose of brine?
This ultimately, I assume, goes to the WRA, where there's some process of decanting or letting it sit to settle it out. But, yeah, we can't put it in the river or
Yeah.
put it in the landfill. That would be a no-no. I assume this went to the WRA.
The contractor got the permits to, I'm not sure if it was the WRA or the solid.
Yeah,
waste.
actually Laura is not, she just came back from a tour last week of the WRA, so they saw it at the WRA. It goes to the sewage treatment facility.
Okay,
There was about $10,000 in fees just to dispose of it.
okay,
Much like the same ultimate location for what will happen to the regenerated brine waste that you just approved a pumping station for. It'll go to the sanitary sewer and then go to Vandalia for the Regional Wastewater Reclamation Authority to process.
okay.
That wasn't a terribly long answer, I
No,
don't think.
no, I just didn't wanna turn us into a,
No,
Yeah, and
all
I
good.
just wanna ask one more question about the contractor. We had experience with them. Were they working with us when we pumped it out this time, or?
They were not involved in emptying it, but this
Different
contractor
contractor.
is someone that we've worked with before. That they were alongside us when some initial inspections were made after it was empty to kind of assess the level of repair that was needed. So they kind of worked collaboratively with us to actually identify some products that would be used down there and actually complete a little bit of a mock-up, a little demonstration that we could see and kind of assess. So again, they were working with us. They gave us a price that we liked, and they also gave us a time window that they felt like they could complete the work. And you couple that with the fact it was probably gonna cost us another $50,000 to fill it and empty it again, moving forward with this contractor.
With a date uncertain as to when we would be able to do that and further deterioration of the tank. The contracts here, you can imagine, very different set of specialties and skills to decant, pump this out, and dispose of the fluid than it is to actually get in a concrete chamber and rehab it. So do we use HydroClean here? Who did we use for that?
We used Badger Daylighting. We got
Badger.
quotes from
Badger.
HydroClean
Yeah,
and Badger.
different skill set, getting the stuff out of the tank and then rehabbing the tank. They're two different things.
Thank you. Any more questions about the emergency brine tank?
And I have no further comments from an operating standpoint. Ted and his crews have done, Jen and her crews, under Ted's overall leadership, have done a great job in our main break season. Actually, the current condition where the ground covered with snow and about 2 feet of frost, Ted reminds me, rather than what we typically see, 5 feet or so this time of the year, insulates the ground and provides less problem than you would probably think. Otherwise, we're certainly concerned about what happens to melt off and movements within the soil then, but we are running behind our normal schedule and budgeted amounts of water main emergency repairs. Jen and her crews have done a terrific job of staying in front of it, again, with Ted's guidance. That's all I have.
I do have a question on all the melting and possible flooding. Could you
Yeah.
address that, Bill? I know we.
Certainly, we'll be working, Sue, yeah, we have an operations plan, a flooding plan to protect our facilities. Clearly, the big question is the rate of melt and the amount of flooding we see at any one period of time. But we'll be closely working with the Army Corps of Engineers and others, watching how melt off impacts our facilities. Again, we've had pretty good luck. You'll remember the June-July event where we had, pretty significant rains here in Des Moines. We were able to effectively protect our facilities. The devil again is in the detail. How quickly will it melt? And I'm not familiar enough with snowpack to our north and to our west or within the watershed to have a sense of the amount of risk. I know the Corps is already beginning, the Army Corps of Engineers is already beginning to articulate concerns about spring melt-off. But we not only have flooding concerns, but we have water quality concerns associated with the melt-off also. We see too much turbidity and too much ammonia relative to what we would want to see. So we'll be watching and keeping you apprised of major events, but the key issue is how quickly the melt-off occurs. We do not want 70-degree days for a while, let's put it that way.
Some of us do.
Travel for those,
Travel.
please. Travel for those.
There are two other items on the information items, the contract status spreadsheet and the lien certifications and reversals. Is there anything other than what we were provided specific to point
Yeah,
out?
you receive those each and every month, and certainly if you have particular concerns or questions on those, we're happy to answer them, but that's, those are typical items for you to see.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Ooh.